Ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant day. This is Robert T. Salvador from the Senior High School Department, and today I am honored to present my research study titled Communicative Competence of Senior High School Students, Basis for Remedial Program in English. Communicative competence, as defined by Canale and Swing, is a synthesis of basic grammatical principles and knowledge of how language is used in social settings to perform communicative functions. In other words, this is learners' ability to use language to communicate successfully. Although the Philippines is doing fine in terms of English language proficiency, for Tabigon, there is still a need to step up the country's efforts in improving the English language teaching and learning. Despite there are related studies about communicative competence, only a few directed towards proposing a program to answer students' language learning needs. As an English language teacher, the researcher is exposed to varied learning circumstances of the students and compelled by sense of commitment to augment teaching outputs, the researcher ventured into finding effective solutions to these difficulties in English language learning. This study primarily aimed to assess the communicative competence of the senior high school students in a private academic institution in Bacolod City for school year 2020-2021. Moreover, the salient findings of the study served as the basis in constructing a remedial program to aid students' difficulties in English language learning. For clarity and emphasis, this study is anchored on the theoretical model of communicative competence by Canale and Swing. These competencies includes linguistic competence, discourse competence, strategic competence, and socio-linguistic competence. For our schematic diagram, it shows that the senior high school students are grouped according to sex and strength. And in the context of this study, the researcher wanted to determine the level of linguistic competence and discourse competence categorized into intermittent, limited, moderate, competent, and good. And finally, the results would serve as the basis in constructing a remedial program in English. For the methodology, the researcher employed descriptive comparative research design to assess the communicative competence of the senior high school students in terms of the level of linguistic and discourse competencies. The 248 senior high school students are determined using stratified random sampling. Moreover, for the research instruments, the researcher utilized essay tests and extemporaneous speaking questions as the main research instruments of the study. For validity, the good and skates rating of 4.20 is interpreted as very good. Hence, the instrument is considered valid. For reliability, the researcher utilized inter-rater reliability test using Cohen's kappa formula, which acquired the value of 0.71, which means that there is substantial agreement among the raters of the research instruments. Meanwhile, for data analysis, mean, standard deviation, independent t-test, one-way analysis of variance are utilized to interpret and analyze the data gathered. Now, moving on to the results of the research study, it shows that male students, in terms of linguistic competence, garnered a mean of 38.07, interpreted as competent. In comparison, in terms of linguistic competence, female students garnered a higher mean of 50.07, interpreted as good. The data suggests that male students know basic grammar and use them correctly with occasional errors, while female students have knowledge beyond basic grammar and uses them with very few and negligible errors. In terms of discourse competence, female students also garnered a higher mean of 50.73, interpreted as good, while male students garnered a mean of 43.33, interpreted as competent. The results imply that in terms of discourse competence, students who are females can speak clearly and comprehensively with cohesion and coherence as compared to the male students who encounter minimal difficulty. When grouped according to strands, the data suggests that UMS, STEM, and ABM students were highly competent in grammar and mechanics, whereas HE students use basic grammar with very few negligible errors. However, ICT students use basic grammar with considerable errors at a mean of 35.710, interpreted as moderate. Moreover, the findings prove that both UMS and STEM students performed well in oral discourse with a means of 52.5 and 48.710, interpreted as good and competent, as compared to ABM and HE students, as well as ICT students who only have satisfactory speaking ability. In terms of determining the significant differences in both areas, linguistic and discourse competence, when the senior high school students are grouped according to sex, there is significant difference noted. In contrast, when they are grouped according to strand, no significant differences were noted in both areas. All in all, the results imply that female students perform better in both written and oral communication when compared to male students. Moreover, the findings of this study concludes that when grouped according to strand, the means of the students' level of discourse competence vary, wherein UMS and STEM students were more knowledgeable in terms of grammar and mechanics compared to ABM, HE, and ICT students. In terms of discourse competence, UMS and STEM students too performed orally better than ABM, HE, and ICT students. All in all, this study concludes that senior high school students know and use basic grammar with occasional errors, and at the same time, they can speak clearly and comprehensively with minimal difficulty. The overall salient findings of the study implied that the senior high school students' communicative competence could still be improved. Hence, a remedial program in English is proposed. The program targets to provide additional instruction to ensure that the students meet their grade level expectations concerning English language learning and communication skills. The program aimed the following. Number one, for the students to improve their written and oral communication skills by engaging in different learning activities. Second, to develop their mastery and proficiency in English language through series of modular exercises. Third, they must have collaborated with peers in accomplishing specific tasks. Fourth, they must demonstrate critical thinking and creativity by delivering spoken group performances. And finally, the students must have established self-confidence in using English as a language. Thank you so much for listening. This has been Robert T. Salvador. Remember that in research, there is truth.